Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm excited to have us join today's meeting.
Good morning.
It's a follow-up to
Good morning.
last week's session.
Morning.
It's a follow-up to last week's session. And in today's session, we will be running through an analysis of the demographic and health survey data using Stata. This is the first part of the presentation. So I'm sure you are in, all of us are in for an exciting learning and knowledge sharing session. Our speakers are experts in the field. I already heard Dr. Seidu's voice. Yeah, I did. And I'm happy we have these two giants on the call today. So, colleagues, as we join the meeting, we need to stay muted. Everybody is on auto mute, but please do not unmute your microphone unless there's a need to speak. Maybe during the Q&A session, we would need to move as fast as possible so that we can accommodate a couple of questions after the sessions. We'll be having two sessions in one today. So please, I know you are set for a good time, but please, as the sessions proceed, if you have any question, you can either post them in the chat box so that if possible, the speakers can attend to them on the go, or we'll take them after each of the presentations. All right. I won't be reading the bio just to save time, but you should know that these duo are amazing in the field of DHS analytics, and they have collaborated to publish and to train people on how to run through the DHS, how to navigate it, and how to successfully pull up good quality manuscripts using the demographic health survey data. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the microphone to Dr. Bright and Dr. Abdulaziz. Over.
All right, Anu, thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. And just like you said, the presentation is going to be in two parts. I'll start off by introducing you to Stata. We'll just quickly have an overview of the Stata interface and some key commands that you might need when you are analyzing data using Stata. Then after that, Bright will take you through the practical aspect of our training today. And can you please give me access to share my screen? Okay, perfect. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. All right, that's fine.
Yes, it's
Okay, so the introductions, we are already done with that. The next key thing we want to look at is navigating the Stata interface. Then when I'm done, Bright will take you through the practical aspect. So Stata is one of the quantitative data analysis tools that most people use for their data analysis. And we have different. Yep.
Yeah, Abdulaziz, please can you show your video maybe for a while?
Okay, that's fine, sure.
Thank you.
Let me stop sharing. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, fabulous. So let me. What about my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So just like I was saying, Stata is one of the quantitative data analysis tools that most people use for their quantitative data analysis. There are different types and versions of that, but the most recent version is Stata 18. And with this Stata 18, what they've done is to make sure that they incorporated previous limitations that the other versions had. So that is how most often they do it. So the most recent version is usually an improved version of the previous one. So let's quickly look at the interface. Okay, so this is how the Stata interface looks like. And I'll reserve most of the practical aspects to the practical session, just like I indicated. So I'll just take you through the theoretical aspect of it. So we have the resource window, and then the resource window is the portion that you enter your commands directly. I'm sorry, it's the portion that your resource will appear. So if you enter your command through the command window, which you can find that here under where I have the log using new analysis, append, that's where you type in your commands to run the analysis that you want to run for you. And then the variables window is where the variables that are in the data set appear. So mostly it presents them in such a way that they appear in how they are stored in the data set. But there are commands you can use to reorder them depending on how you want that to appear. And then the properties window, this gives us information about the size and then even how the variables are labeled in the data set. So if you look at this particular one that we have, you see label, you see type, and then you also have the file name, and then even the number of variables in the data set. So this particular one, for instance, we have over, let me just see, we have over 15,000 observations in the data set. That is how the properties aspect of the Stata, the information that we can find there. Then the other important part of this is also the review window. So the review window gives us information about the previous commands that we've used. This is also very handy in the sense that sometimes you might want to run a command that you've run already. So you don't have to type it again. You just click on that particular command and then it will bring it to the command window section and you can run that again. So that's a quick overview of the Stata interface, but there are certain key things we want to just provide additional information on that. So the first one is the Stata menu. And with the Stata menu, just like some softwares that you can use the click and run, Stata also has a similar feature, but most often than not, most people prefer to use the commands. But if you don't want to use the commands, you still have the opportunity to use the drop-down menu. So on this particular slide, we have, if you click on, I think under statistics, you have bar chart, you have dot chart, you have pie chart, histogram, box plot, and the various ones that you have. And if you want to also use, let's say, the drop-down menu to also present some of your results in figures, you have bar charts, just like I indicated. You can also present that in pie chart without using a command. But a good thing is that if you use the drop-down menu, the corresponding command that you should have used, if you want to directly type that in the command window, will also appear for you, which is very handy as well. Let's also look at another very important feature of Stata, which is the log file. And then the log file, it helps you keep records of all the commands and outputs that you have in a particular analysis, with the exception of graphs. So apart from graphs, everything that you do in your Stata, when you are using it for analysis, if you specify a log file, Bright will show you how to start or generate a log file for your analysis. It is very, very important. And this is also very handy sometimes for your own records keeping. You might want to go back to see how you recorded a particular variable or how many observations were present for a specific variable of interest. So the log file gives you an opportunity to always go back and check. So to open a log file, Bright will demonstrate that. So I'm quickly going to just show that here. So to do that, you can just use the drop-down menu, or you can use the command window. You just say log using maybe new analysis command append, and the new analysis is the name that you are giving to your log file. And then to close it, you can just type capture log close, or you can still use the drop-down menu to close that as well. Let's look at the next one, which is do files. So unlike the log files that keep track of all the analysis or the outputs, and then even the commands except graphs, the do file is an area that you write your scripts. The scripts are just the commands you are going to use for your analysis. And to open that, you can just type do edit to open a do file, and you can type in your command, or there are instances you might even get a do file from a colleague or from an individual, and you can edit that to suit whatever analysis you want to use. So if you look at this particular slide, you have here, you see do file editor. Can you see that? So to open the do file, you can just click on that for that to open if you don't want to use the command. And there are certain key things in the do file. So you see some of the writings are in red, others are in green, and then others are in blue. I think Bright will throw more light on that when we get to the practical aspect of our session today. So basically, that's what I was talking about. And then in Stata 2, you can import different data versions, being an Excel file, being it an SPSS file, or a data file that has been saved in another software. It can be an R script or an R file that you might want to use if you maybe use R for your previous analysis, but you now want to do that in Stata, or you might use another software, SAS or any other software that you use for your data management. So you can import that into your Stata for analysis. So if you do that and you are saving the Stata file, you see a DTA file. So when you see a file extension with .dta, then that means it is a Stata file. So double clicking on the DTA file in Windows will open the data in a new instance of Stata, or if you already have a file that you want to change the name, you can change the name and then you can double click it, or you can import that into your Stata file for analysis. Right, to show you how to import data into the Stata interface for analysis. But we just want to emphasize that, especially for Windows users, be careful of having many Stata windows open, because sometimes it might confuse you as to which one you are using for your analysis. So to load the files, I think I'll leave this one for Bright to show you that during the importation of the one we are going to use for the analysis. Another important feature here is the help file, because sometimes you might be using a command or you might be analyzing a data in a specific way, but you are not very clear whether the direction you are going is the right way, or even the command, you wouldn't really know whether you have to bring this before or you have to bring it after. So the help function in Stata is very handy when you want to get additional information on some of these things. And to do that, you can just type help. So if I want to use logistic regression, or if I want to use the logit or logistic command to analyze my data that perhaps the variable is a binary variable, then I can just type help logistic and it will specify how I should show that in my analysis to get the output that I want to get. The other important thing we want to also expose you to today is the browse command. So the browse helps you to have an idea of how your variables are in your data set. So if you just type browse and then you press enter in the command window, you get an interface like this. So what this means is that from the first output that you get, you wouldn't have the opportunity to edit anything here. But if you click on the browse, the output, and you double click a particular variable, for instance, the one here, if I double click this, but because this is a PowerPoint slide, you might not see what I mean. If I double click this, it will ask me whether I want to edit it or not. So the moment I give the Stata the opportunity to edit this, then I can edit the responses or the numbers here. But anytime you are doing that, just be mindful of the fact that you are doing the right thing, because the moment you finish and you save, it will alter the original data set that you have. So essentially, it is always very important to also keep a master copy of the data you are using. So this slide is just giving you an idea of the external resources and materials we use for this slide. So I'll pause here, and then Dr. Henkra will take over and take you through the practical aspect of our session for today. And just like Anu said, if you have any question, please, you can just write it down. When we get to the final section of the presentation, then we'll give you opportunity to ask as many questions as possible that you might have. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Bright.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulaziz Seidu, for the wonderful presentation. I think you touched on a lot of things that would make it easy for us to run through the practical session easily. So let me just go straight to what we are going to do. And I am assuming that all of us have installed Stata on our machines, or we know how to use Stata, because we are just going to do a bit of practicalities using the DHS data. So let me go straight to what we are going to do. Can you all see my screen?
Not yet. It's still
Not
loading. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. Where's the do file? Yeah. Okay, it comes as pause here. Okay. All right, let me do it once more. Okay, can you all see
Yes.
it now?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. So as Dr. Seidu was speaking, he mentioned a lot of things, and we are going to see exactly what he meant by those things. The first thing he mentioned was a do file, and this is a sample do file. A do file is just like a template that keeps all the commands that you are going to use for your analysis. And you can either have a do file from somebody or prepare it from scratch. So this particular do file, as you can see here, was prepared from scratch by myself, Abdulaziz, and one of our mentees. If you want to start doing it afresh, you can either use the command to open a new do file, or you can go to the Stata software and then just click on do file edit, and then it will open a window. So if I go to my Stata interface here, I will be switching from the do file and then the Stata interface. You can see that here, I can click on do file edit, and then I will just click on new do file editor. When I click on it, it will open a window like this. The first thing you would have to do before you start putting anything here is to save this particular sheet. Because if you don't save it and then you finish and mistakenly close it, you have lost your do file. You have lost everything you have done. So what you can do is to just go to File, Save, or you can press Ctrl+S, depending on whatever you're using.
Sorry, Bright. We can only see the do file.
Oh, you can't see the other one.
Yes, sorry.
What is it doing that? Okay, hold on, let me see. Okay, I think it comes now, right? Can you see the two?
I can see a new do file
Open.
untitled, and then the other one, DHS Data Analysis Part 1.
Okay, so I'm just explaining that if you don't have a do file and you want to do it from scratch, you have to create it from here by either clicking on the do file editor, or you can come to the command window. Dr. Seydu mentioned command window. This is the command window, and you can just type do edit and then enter, and it will create a new interface for you to enter your commands. So this is what you can do if you want to create a new do file from scratch. And like I've mentioned, always make sure you save it before you start entering something into it.
Yeah.
So
sorry again, Bright. I think it's still only the do file we can see. The main Stata, I can't see that one.
Oh, can you see this? It's here.
Is it my screen? Okay, let me.
No, probably you could share your entire screen so that as you navigate from screen to screen, we can follow.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah.
Let me do that. Sorry.
That's okay.
I thought that was what I did. Screen. Okay. So this is desktop. Is it better?
Yes. Perfect. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. All right. So this is what I was talking about. So we created the do file from scratch. So as you can see, we had an untitled do file, saved it, and started running commands, putting the commands in here. So this is what we did to generate this particular do file that you can see from here. So now I'm going to walk you through some of the commands that we have in this do file and explain to you how they work using the DHS data. And for this particular workshop or training, we got all these from the Ghana Demographic and Health Survey data 2022. And a lot of the things we are going to talk about are from that particular data set. So the first thing you would want to do before you even start your analysis is to use the clear command to clear anything that is in the particular data set you are going to use. This is important because you might have done some previous analysis and all that, and you don't want that to distort the current analysis you are going to do. So the first command you run before you start anything in your do file is to run the clear all command. So the clear all clears everything from your macros or the program, and then it gives you a new or fresh interface for you to start your analysis. When you are done with this command, the next thing is to use the set more of. The set more of command tells Stata that you are going to run a lot of commands continuously so that there are no breakages when you are running a particular command. Because if you are running a lot of commands and you don't set more of, there can be breakages if the command brings results that are so long. So it tells Stata so that whatever you are going to do, it should continue it until the end of the do file. So this command is very, very important before you start your analysis. The next thing you would also want to do is to set max var. Max var is the maximum number of variables in your data set. And this will differ depending on the kind of Stata you are using. Stata MP will take as much as 5,000 values. Stata SE will take 2,047 and all that. Other versions of Stata will take maximum numbers. But before you start your analysis, just let Stata know that you want the maximum number of variables to be up to 32,000. And the 32,000 here doesn't mean that that is the limit it can take. You are only using it as more or less a default kind of number that you can use for your analysis. And a lot of analysis using the DHS wouldn't go more than 32,000 variables. After you have set your variables up to the maximum number using this command, the next line of command you have to run, which is line 32, is the change directory command, which is the CD. What the CD does is that it creates more or less a link to all the folder or the files that you are going to use for your analysis. So for instance, if the do file that I'm going to use, the data I'm going to use are located in a particular folder, I need to use the change directory command to indicate that when I call the data, Stata should go to that particular folder where the data is located. When I open the do file, Stata should go there. And when I open a log file, Dr. Seydu talked about a log file where all your results, excluding those that comes in graphs and other things, are. All those results, I want Stata to save them in that particular folder. And that is where you use the change directory command, the CD. So for instance, for this particular analysis we are going to do, the data we are going to use is in the particular folder on my desktop or on my laptop. Then I also have a log file I'm going to open, which I want it to be saved in that particular folder. And the folder is located on this link. So how do I do that? If I want to call in the directory, what I need to do is to go and locate the folder and copy the path name and bring it here. So let me just demonstrate that to you. So I start with CD. I open two inverted commas like this. Then I go to my folder. So here I have this particular folder, and the folder's name is workshop. So when I click on the folder is located on my hard drive, and it is in another folder called REMS. And the folder's actual name is workshop. So what I need to do is to copy this path name. How do I copy that? I just click on this one, and then it gives me options. Then we have copy workshop as path name. I will just copy it like this. Then I go back to my do file. Where's my do file? I go back to my do file, and I just copy it as I've copied it and then paste it in the middle here. Something like this. So the moment I copy it and put it here, it means that when I call in the data is in this folder. And when I log in a log file, the log file will also be in this particular folder. So that is how you change directory. It is up to you. You can create a new directory. You can create a new folder for the directory or anything. But that is how you can create a directory for your analysis. So this is just simple. After you have created your directory, the next thing you want to do is to call in your data. So if you want to call in your data, because the data is located in this particular folder, I just use the use command in Stata to call in the data. Within this particular folder called workshop, the data's name is training_data.dta. Dr. Seydu mentioned .dta, that whenever you see any .dta, it is a Stata data file name. So here, that is the name of the data. How do I go and copy that and bring it here? I'll just go back to my folder, and the workshops folder, as you can see here, I'll just look for my data. The data is here. DHS, where is it? Okay. Oh, okay, it's here. Where is it?
DHS analysis. Do file for DHS analysis.
No, the DTA.
Training data.
Training data. Good, it's here.
Yeah.
Good, it's here. So what I need to do, just as I did when I was copying the path name for the change directory, I need to highlight this one and come down here, right-click on it, and then copy training DTA as path name. So when I copy it and I go back to my do file, what I need to do is to clear all these things. These ones were already done, but I'm just showing you how these were generated. So I'll just clear them, open inverted commas, and then I'll just put them in between the two inverted commas. So you can see them here. I've now created the data. So the data is here now. We can call it in whenever we want. After we have called in our data, the next thing we want to do is to keep track of everything that we are doing. And that is where we use what we call the log file. And before you open a new log file, you have to make sure you have closed all log files. How do you close that? You use the command capture log close, and then it closes any log file that is already there. Then the next thing is to call in a new log file using the command log using and the log file's name, as you can see here. And you can use either append or replace. If there's already a log file that is called this one, that has the same name as this, you just have to replace it. If there is no log file there, you just can use the append in order to run all the commands into that particular log file. So let's run up to the top, from here up to the log file, and then we start some basic things we want to do today. So I'll just start from here up to the log file, and I run. When I run and then I come to my data set, you can see that now I have my data in Stata. Everything that I want to do is already here. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do is to do some basic commands in Stata. And to do that, we are going to do our analysis, and the topic that we chose for this particular workshop is predictors of cervical cancer screening. Before we do some basic commands in Stata, we want to keep only the variables that are of interest for our study. If we are studying something on cervical cancer screening, it's not every variable we will be interested in. We have to keep the variables that are of interest in the data set. But mind you, before you keep the variables that are of interest, make sure your original data set is somewhere. So you can duplicate that and have it somewhere, so that when you use the keep command, you wouldn't lose all the other variables. Because the moment you use this keep command, any other variable that is not in that particular command will not be in the data set. So that is one thing you need to do. How do you decide which variables you are going to use for your analysis? You need to look for the variables informed by literature. So you have to read. The first thing is to consider what your outcome variable will be. Of course, you are going to look at predictors of cervical cancer screening. So our outcome variable obviously will be cervical cancer screening. So you have to look for that particular variable in your DHS data sets. And the name of that variable is V484A. That is the name of cervical cancer screening. So we are going to keep that particular variable. Then we ask ourselves, we are going to study predictors of cervical cancer screening. What are some of the variables that are likely to be predictors? And this one, you cannot sit in your room and decide on this. You have to read what other people have done in the past through literature. Then you select all other variables that are going to be important. Let's say if age is going to be important, religion is going to be important, ethnicity or any other variable, you look for the corresponding variable names in the DHS dataset, and then you add them to the keep command. And that is what we have done here up to this point. All these variables from literature for us are variables that are very important as predictors of cervical cancer screening. You wouldn't be able to see their actual names here, but when you go to the data set, you'll be able to see them. When I go there, I will show you all the names there. Apart from these key variables, which we consider as predictors, there are some key variables in the DHS that you have to keep whenever you are going to use DHS for your analysis. The first one is V001. Sorry, V000, which is the country code. So the name of the country, that particular variable is very, very important. And you have to keep that particular variable as we have here. Then we also have variable V001. And V001 is another variable that is very, very important. Sorry, I want to see the variable's name so that I will show you. Yes, so we also have V001. Then we also have V012, very, very important. We also have V005, very important, and all other variables that we consider very, very important for our analysis. You need to keep all these variables before you start working in the DHS data. So once you have kept all the variables in here, then as somebody who is starting the analysis, you need to start running some basic commands. The first one is using the tabulate command. The tabulate command only gives you the frequencies and then the percentages of a particular variable. And if you want to do that, we just go to our data set, or we can run it straight from here. So we want to check tab V013 and see what that variable is. So when you highlight on it and then you click on the do execute, you go to your data set and it has executed that particular command. So we have V001 and it refers to the age in 5-year groups. It has all its categories. It has the frequency, and then we have the percentage and the cumulative frequencies or cumulative percentages. They are also here. The next thing you want to do, if you check, you can see that this particular variable, when we use the tab command, only gives us the categories of the variables with the frequencies and percentages. It doesn't give us the labels or the values that are assigned to each of these labels. The values are important because usually when you are going to do recoding or anything, you need the values. And one of the things you can do in order for you to show that the values are there, or to understand the values assigned to each category, is to use the command called num label. So you have to use num label add, and then you tab the variable and it gives you the numbers that are assigned to each of the categories. So let's practice that. So when I highlight all these things and I execute and go to my results window, you can see that now we have 1 assigned to 15 to 19, up to 7 assigned to 45 to 49. One other option, if you don't want to use the num label add and then the tab, is to use the free command or the frequency command. And that one also gives you the values assigned to the categories. So instead of going to the do file, I will just type it in the command window. So free V013, and then I press enter, and it gives me these particular categories as well as their values, as you can see them beautifully here. The next thing we would want to do is to just explore some cross tabulations. And to explore these cross tabulations, you can see we have a set of variables. And when we talk about cross tabulation, we are talking about tabulation between 2 or more variables. So we want to cross tabulate the variable V013 and V025. So let's just highlight this command and then run it. And when we run and we come to our output, the results window, you can see that we have a cross tabulation between age and place of residence, beautifully done here. For those who will be using chi-square and all that, this one, as you can see here, it gives you only frequencies. It doesn't give you the percentages. And if you want to add percentages to each of the frequencies, you either use the column total or the row total, and then add that to the command. So we can run these two, as you can see here. And now when we come to our output, you can see that we have the percentages assigned to each of the frequencies that we already had up here. So that is also something you can make do with every time. I already explained the frequency command. The next thing we want to...
Sorry, Bright, just to be sure that we can all hear Bright. Can we all hear Bright? Let's...
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, and am I going too
you.
fast or too
Yes, we are
slow?
hearing him.
We cannot hear him.
Is it too fast or too slow?
Yes,
No,
too
it's
fast.
perfect. It's perfect.
No,
It's
it's too
perfect.
fast.
Too fast.
Too fast.
Too fast.
Too fast.
We will watch the recording.
Okay,
It's
okay.
okay. Okay. We can move on.
I will try and slow down a bit. Yes,
All
I will
right,
slow down
Bright.
a bit, not a lot.
Thank you. Continue. I just wanted to be sure that we can all hear you.
Okay, thank you, Abdulaziz.
No
So
problem.
the next thing, as you have already spoken about the free command, is to talk about summaries. Summaries is very, very important because you want to check the variables that you are going to use. You want to see something about the mean. You want to see something about the mode. you want to see something about the median and then how the variables are distributed. So what you can do is to use the summarize command. The short is sum. So you can either use sum or summarize. Everything you want to use, it will give you the same results. But when you use only summarize without specifying variables, it will summarize all the variables in your data set. But the moment you summarize and then you specify variables, it will only give you summaries or summary statistics for specific variables. So let's run the summarize command and see how it will appear. So when I run it here, and then I come to my data set like this, you can see that all the variables that are in the data set are here. And we have the summary statistics for them, the mean, standard deviation, the median, the minimum, and then the maximum for each of the variables. Nicely done here. Assuming I want to only summarize two variables, V012 and V013, what I need to do is to just run this particular command and specify these variables, as I've done here. When I run this particular command like this, it will only give me the summaries or summary statistics for only these two variables without the rest. As you can see, the summarize command only gives you observations, mean, standard deviations, minimum and maximum. Sometimes you want more statistics about the variables. In that case, you have to add the command detail, so that when you do that with the summarize command, it will give you details about whatever you are doing. So let's try it with this particular variables. Summarize V01 to detail, and then I run it, and it gives me more percentiles, the smallest value, the variance, the skewness, the ketosis, and all that. It gives me all those values. Very, very important. So that is how summarize also works. Now, another important thing about Stata is the use of functions and expressions. And these functions and expressions are used in a lot of softwares, including R. So for instance, we have the arithmetic operators, we have the relational operators, and then we have logical operators. So the arithmetic operators, all of us are mathematicians, I guess. We are talking about addition, plus, subtraction, minus, multiplication. And multiplication is not the normal multiplication that we have. We represent it with a star on our keyboard. We have division, which is the slash. We have raised to the power. These are very important because whenever you are creating new variables, sometimes you may use these arithmetic operators. We also have relational operators such as greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equal, and then not equal, and then missing or no observation. Look at what these operators are. So whenever you are doing your analysis, you want to create a new variable, and you want to say, maybe I want to create a variable such that this particular category is greater than or less than this category, you have to use some of these relational and then arithmetic operators. How do they work? And this is just an example. Now, we want to tabulate a particular variable, V025. If V012 is greater than 25. So V012 is age, and the V025 is place of residence. So we want to tabulate V025 if age is greater than 25. So let's run this command and see how it works. The moment I specify that and then I execute, I come to my output. You will see that we have only the frequencies and percentages for rural and urban for only those who are age greater than 25. So anybody that is less than 25, the person's frequency will not be part here. So that is how we have employed this relational operator in order to specify what we are doing. We can do the same for these relational operators, but this is just a typical example. Another type of operator that we often use when we are doing our analysis in DHS using Stata is AND, which is represented by the ampersand, or which is represented by this, and then NOT, which is this one. Let's try an example. Here, we want to tabulate V106. And V106 is the educational level of the woman. If V012, which is the age, is greater than 30, or V012 is greater than 25, and V025, which is the place of residence, is equal to 1. So when we highlight this one and we run, we will get our results here. And this particular results we see here only relates to this particular command that we have run using these logical and then relational operators. Very simple, something you can be doing at ease. Apart from these operators, sometimes we want to explore our data to see how they are. And two important commands in Stata you can use to do data exploration is describe and codebook. So the describe gives you a description of the variables, how they are categorized, how they were collected and all that. So let's run a command for describe using V106 as a variable. When we run this particular command and execute, it gives us information about the variable name, the storage type, the display format, the value label, and the variable label, highest educational level. Very, very important. Why is this important? Because sometimes when you are coding a particular variable and the storage type is bytes, you might not be able to use it. Or when you want to append two variables or you want to create two variables and the storage type is bytes, you might not be able to use it. So this is something that you might be considering when you are doing your analysis. An extension to the describe is codebook. And let's run codebook V106 and see what happens. So when we run this particular one, it gives us more information about the variable, including the number of missing, the categories, their labels, the frequency, the range, and all these unique values. Very, very important also for our analysis. Having described all these preliminary issues when we are using the DHS and Stata, let's now try to do something quickly by recoding and renaming some variables using the DHS Ghana 2022. And before we start, whenever you are doing your analysis, after you have done the preliminary log file, do file, change command and all that, change directory and all that, the first thing you do whenever you are using the DHS for your analysis is to generate the weight. Last week when I was presenting, I mentioned that the weight variable is very, very important because it is an important step you cannot miss. And how do you generate the weight? This is the standard command in generating weight. It's just gen, which is referred to as generate. WT is a name you want to give for the weight. It can be anything. We use WT. You can call it weight. You can call it anything. Equal to V005. And V005 is the name of the weight variable in the DHS. And you divide it by 1 million. So the first step is to generate the weight like this. And once you generate it, it means that you know that this particular analysis you are going to do, you will be considering weight. After you have generated your weight, the next step is to declare the DHS data as a survey data. And we all know the DHS is a survey data. So this command survey set is also very, very important. And how do you declare? You declare using two very important variables, the V021, which is the primary sampling unit, and then the V023, which is the cluster number. So this is the strata, and then this is the PSU. And this is also a standard command you can use. Survey set V021, this and that, comma, strata V023. When you run it like this, it will show that you have declared the data as survey data. Also standard. The next thing we want to do.
Sorry, Bright. I
Okay.
think someone has a burning question. Ahin.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, about the weight generation, he said we will divide by 1 million. Please, can you throw more light on it? Why is 1 million and not any other number?
Okay, thank you. I think I thought it was something peculiar, but we'll address all that when we get to the final stage of our presentation, just to save time. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let's move on. So after you have generated the survey sets, the weight and the surveys, declare the survey as survey data. I mentioned earlier that we are going to work on something, predictors of cervical cancer screening. And I also indicated that the variable name or the variable for cervical cancer screening is V484A. And we have already kept that particular variable in our data set. So how do we start our analysis? The first thing we are going to do is you have to decide as an individual the kind of analysis you are going to do. And mind you, a lot of the analysis you do sometimes depends also on the type of variable. This particular variable for cervical cancer screening is a categorical variable. And in our minds, we are going to do binary logistic regression or any other logistic regression. So before we do that, we need to create a variable, a new variable from the original variable as a binary variable. Because to do logistic regression or multi-level regression, you need to have a binary outcome for the outcome variable. And that is what we have done here. So what we need to do here is to recode the original variable. And recoding follows this pattern. So recode V484. Before we recode, we want to check to see what the variable is and its categories are. So when we free, using the free command, when we free the variable, we have it as 3 categories: 0 for no, 1 for yes, and 8 for don't know. And let me explain something here. Some people would decide to drop the don't know. Other people will decide to put the don't know as part of the no category. It depends on how you want to do it. So if you want to drop the no, don't know, it means that you use the command drop and then it drops the don't know. Then you code the rest of the variables. But then if you want to add the don't know to the no category, then you follow this pattern that we have here. So we have recode this particular variable 0 and 8. And here we are using the values. We are not using the actual categories. So we have 0 and 8, and we are calling that 0, and that is called no, and 1 as 1, and it's called yes. And we use what we call comma. Gen is for generate, and we call the new variable breast test. So now let's use that and see. So when we recode it like this, we have our new variable called breast test. Let's free that variable and see what happens. So when we free that particular variable, we have our 2 categories from the original 3 categories that we have here. So we have 0 and 1, no, and then yes. The next thing you can do, if you don't want to use this particular command, you can also use another command here, which is the same as the first one, but you use into instead of gen, and it will give you the same thing. I don't want to do it again. Now, after we have recoded our outcome variable, the next thing we want to do is to recode or rename our explanatory variables. The difference between renaming and recoding is that rename keeps the original variables, or it keeps the variable as it is without any changes to the categories. But the recoding will change the categories in the way that you want. So for instance, we have a variable called V013, which is the age of the woman. So when we feed that particular variable, this is the categories we have: 15 to 19, 20 to 24, up to 45 to 49. And we want to rename this particular variable. There are 2 ways you can rename. You can either use the clone var, or you can use the rename. When you use the clone var command, what it does is that it renames the variable, but it keeps the original variable in the data set. But then when you use the rename, it renames the original variable name, and you can't find the original variable name again in the data set. So let's use clone var to see what happens. So we are going to clone var And V013, which is the age of the woman in 5-year groups, we are going to call that maternal age. So let's run the clone var command like this. And when we clone var, it means that whenever we are looking for V013, instead of that, we type maternal age. So when we type maternal age, as we have done here, you can see that we still have the variable with its categories here. The same name, but different labels here, as you can see. Very, very important here. The other thing is that, as I indicated, even though I have cloned the variable V013, I can still see variable V013 there because I use clone var. So let's say free V013, and it will still come. But when I use rename, for instance, I'm using rename for a variable V106, which is the age of the woman. So let's free V106 like this, and then rename it as education. When I rename it as education, and then I free education, I will still find the variable here, but I cannot find V106 again. Let's try and see. Free V106. It says variable not found because I have renamed the original variable as education. So there is no more 106. The next thing we want to do is to recode the other variables. And the same thing we did for the outcome variable here is what we are going to do for the other variables. So for instance, I want to recode marital status, which is V501, as 0 is equal to 0. And I'm going to call that never in union. 1 is 1 married, 2 is 2 cohabitation, and 3 to 5 as previously married. So let's first look at what the variable is and its categories. So we use the free command. So I type free V501. I have 0 as never in union, 1 as married, 2 is living with partner, 3 is widowed, 4 is divorced, and 5 is no longer living together or separated. Because these categories are a lot, I want to recode them. So 0 as 0, and then I still call it never in union. 1 as 1, I call it married. 2 as 2, I call it cohabitation. And from 3 up to 5, that is why I use 3/5. So 3 up to 5. I can equally make it 3, 4, and 5 like this, equal to 3. And then I call that previously married, and I generate using the gen, marry, and I have generated it. So let's generate that and see. So recode this and that, execute. We have done this. Let's free the command, the variable, and see whether it has generated. So when we free it, it has now generated a new variable called marry. And then we have never in union, married, cohabitation, and previously married, different from the original categories that we have here. You will likely use the same pattern if we are going to recode all other variables for your analysis. And that is what we have done here, from religion up to working status, up to health insurance subscription, up to visit health facility, up to mass media and all that. We use the same thing to recode all of them. Where we are not going to recode, but we are going to just rename them, we use the clone var or the rename to do that. And that is what we have done up to the last one that we have here, which is the, what do you call it? Middle Southern. So this one is the categories of the region into 3 groups as we have here. So that is how rename, recoding, and the clone var, that is how they work. And these are commands you'll be using very often whenever you are going to do your data management before your analysis. So once we are finished with this, let's look at some basic visualizations in Stata using the DHS. And these are important because sometimes you want to check the normality of a particular variable to see whether it is normally distributed and it meets the assumption of a particular test or not. And one of the things you can do is to use histogram. So histogram, you can use it on any of the variables, and then you can specify the width. You can specify whether you want it to be normal or not. So let's run this for V012, which is the age of the woman, and see what happens. So let me run histogram V012 with all the details. And I have a histogram here with the normality here, and you can see whether it is skewed or normally distributed from this particular distribution as we have here. You can see the line of asymmetry, and it is not in the middle. And you can see that some of the categories are very skewed to the right. So this particular variable is not normally distributed. That is one of the things you can do to check your data set. Another data visualization tool you can use is the graph or the box plot. And if you want to use the box plot, what you need to do is to run the command graph box v012, which is the same variable we did. And then let's run this one also to see how it works. When we do it, we have a box plot that is nicely displayed here. Something you can be just playing with. Another thing is to do a bar graph, and a bar graph usually use a count variable, and then we want to do that over the variable called religion. And I hope we have already recoded religion somewhere here. Religion. Yes, so let's quickly recode that so that it will be easy for us to do what we are doing. We have recoded that. So if I want to do my bar graph, I will just do it for religion, and then it gives me a bar graph showing the distribution for Christians, Muslim, traditionalists, and no religion. We can also do a two-way bar graph, and it is the same as we did using this one. The last thing I want us to talk about is installing add-ons. Sometimes some of the commands that you want to run in Stata will not be in the original Stata you are using, so you need to install it. So if you want to install any command, you just use the command ssc install, and then the command name, let's say logistic, or let's say logit, or any other command that you want. You just type ssc install this, and then it runs it for you. If it is already installed, Stata will tell you that it is already installed. So let's say ssc install, and I say logit, and let's see whether it is already there or not. So when I run that, yes, so this one is not found. So I have to search for it somewhere here using the find it or the search, and then I'll be able to see how it can be installed. But there are ways to install a lot of them. You have to just use this particular one to do that. So ssc install, let's say logistic. Yes, so not found in ssc. So you have to look for it in order to install it. I already have a lot of them installed, but if you don't have them installed, just use this particular one, and then you'll be able to do that. So that brings us to the end of the basic things that you can do using Stata for the DHS data analysis. Today, we have looked at the renaming, recoding, and all that. The next workshop we are going to do, we are going to run some normal descriptives. We will do some chi-square tests, and then we will do some logistic regression. And that will bring us to the end of whatever we are doing about the DHS data analysis. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bright. Before we hand over to Anu, I just want to thank you again, Bright, for the great presentation. I can see most of us are requesting for the data set and then the do file. What we plan to do is to keep copies of that via Google Drive, but I'll share the link with you, but we'll keep the data and then the Google, the do file in there after the session. So some of us might open it and wouldn't find that apart from the presentation that I did earlier. So just to let you know that you can copy the link and save it somewhere, and then watch out for the final do file and then a copy of the data set after the session. Thank you. Over to you, Anu.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bright and Abdulaziz. It's been a pleasure learning from you this morning. Okay, colleagues, so we'd like to take questions. Okay, so the first says, can you repeat again how to download the DHS data file?
Okay.
I think before we start responding to the questions too, Bright might leave at a point. He has another meeting. So Bright, feel free to leave at any point you want to, and then I'm happy to respond to the questions they have. Yeah. All right, Bright, do you want to take this one? Anu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's likely Bright
Okay.
having internet issues.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I can respond to that.
Okay.
So,
Yes, I spoke about this the last time, but I think if we want to download it, like I mentioned,
So I think there is
can
some
you hear?
interference with his network.
Can you hear me?
Bright,
Yes, you're back. So Abdulaziz, I think you can continue, please.
Okay,
yeah,
Abdulaziz, you can respond to that, please.
yes. So I think Bright was just emphasizing that he made mention of that during the previous presentation, which I didn't take part. But to do that, you can easily go to the DHS, their website, and then you can create an account. But then you need to get a short concept note about the study you are going to conduct, how you are going to analyze the data set, and then the key variables of interest. And if you have any other collaborators, you need to also prompt them and then get their email so you use for the registration. Then within a few hours, sometimes maximum of 24 hours, they'll give you access to download the data set and you can download that. Yeah. I hope this is helpful.
Yes. Okay, so I think I'll just reply briefly to this question. For evidence of our skill, could you please certify us? Okay, so at this point, we are not issuing certificates, but DHS it's a soft skill. Beyond certificates, it is what you can deliver. You show the skill you have gained in action. So
Right.
beyond adding certificates or putting up certificates is the evidence that you have to showcase. So for now, we are not issuing certificates, but we expect that everyone puts to use what they have learned to improve their work performance subsequently.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, is it free or you may have to pay for the Stata software?
Good question. Unfortunately, Stata is not free, especially if you want to get the most recent version. But this is, don't go and quote me anywhere. But, you know, sometimes you might be fortunate to get a friend who perhaps purchased the licensed one, and then you can get a copy from your friend. Yeah. I think one of our colleagues was sharing the link to download a particular version via Google Drive. So you can just follow through the chat. He kept the Google Drive link by the chat to download it if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you please throw more light on the weight generation variable? And at what point do you use the gen and the SVY sets?
Great. So Bright is still here, Bright?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Do you want to respond or I should respond?
Please respond.
Okay. So the weight generation variable, the key reason why this is introduced in the DHS dataset analysis is just for standardization purposes. And for instance, I know most of us might be from Nigeria or Ethiopia, but if you look at Nigeria, there are different states and there are within these states or regions, in Ghana, we call it regions, there are different localities, being it a rural area or an urban area. So in the process of the sampling, sometimes an area might be undersampled or an area might be oversampled. So because of that, the weighting is introduced to take care of that particular underrepresentation or overrepresentation. So the SVY also helps us to declare the data set before analysis as survey data set because of the inherent complexity in the analysis process. Yeah. Brian, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that you have explained it.
Okay.
Let me respond to the question that one of the guys asked when I was presenting before about why we multiply by 1 million. The 1 million is a standardized form or a standardized number that is used by the DHS. And the reason they divide the V005 by 1 million is to avoid dealing with very small fractions. Sometimes when you are generating the weight and then you have a value such as maybe 0.0000 something, in order to deal with that particular fraction, you multiply by 1 million so that the multiplication will convert these raw numbers into whole numbers and make it easy for statistical softwares to handle. So it's not anything, it is a standardized number that is used in order to ensure that if we have small fractions, they can be converted into a whole number. And please use that. That is what is used for generating weight for any of the DHS data sets. So once you have that in mind, it's not an issue. You just have to stick to that as a standardized approach for generating weights.
Perfect. What is the difference between SPSS and Stata? I came in late and I saw a coding script. Does this mean Stata requires programming skill?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so there are a lot of similarities and differences in SPSS and Stata. But I know when I was starting to learn data analysis, I started with SPSS, but I later moved to Stata. And my main reason why I moved to Stata, and I think it's the same for Bright as well, is because of the command-based nature of Stata. That notwithstanding, it doesn't mean in SPSS2 they do not have commands. I know SPSS2, they have the syntax function of that. So depending on whichever one you feel more comfortable to use, but I personally, I like Stata because it is quite intuitive and the do files functionality also makes it easy to get resources from people that you can easily edit to suit whatever you want to use it for. Yeah. Right. Do you want to add anything to that? Sorry, you're on mute.
That's the difference between them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you please distinguish between the row and column percentages? When do we use each or either?
Good. I think with this one, I'll permit you to give me just 2 minutes or 1 minute to share my screen so that they will see, the person will see exactly what the difference is. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So this is the 2022 Ghana Demographic Health Survey, the individual record file. So to use row and then column percentage, sometimes it's just a matter of choice. But with this one, I want to tabulate age in 5-year age groups across sex of the household head, right? If I'm looking elsewhere, it's because of where my screen is, so please don't worry about that. So if I tabulate this using the row total, you see that the row total, the total here, in terms of the percentage, you see the 100 here, right? So what this means is that among those aged 15 to 19, in terms of the sex of the household head, 62.15% of them are in male-headed households, right? And then about 37.85% are in female-headed households. So if you add these two, we'll get 100%. if I change this to column, if I change this to column, now my total is here. So what that means is that in terms of these specific age groups against sex of household head, about 18.66%, okay, of male-headed households are age 15 to 19. Does that make sense to us? So with that one, if you are interpreting it, you are looking at it this way, right? You have to trace that this way. But personally, I mostly want to use the row percentages because it is more easy to explain and makes practical sense, especially if you want to look at the differences in terms of the within percentages of the various variables or the outcomes of a specific variable of interest. I hope this has clarified that for you.
Abdulaziz, please, I think you
Yep.
need to go over the explanation again. And
Uh-huh.
I would just suggest maybe we have the output for row percentage and column percentage side by side so that we can easily navigate and see the differences.
That's fine, but okay, let me try something like this. Just a moment. So I'm quickly going to do this. So this is row. Then column. All right. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes, maybe you can increase
Very.
the font size or so.
All right. Oops, sorry. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right. So if you look at, so just like I was saying earlier, we are looking at cross tabulation or a 2x2 table, right? In terms of age in 5-year groups and then sex of household head. Okay. So this one is column, COL, and then this one is row percentage. Oops. Okay. So with a column, you can see that the total here, if you
No,
add this and
I think you've
No,
mistaken
the,
them.
the
The first
first
is
one
row.
is row.
oh,
The
sorry.
second,
Sorry. Yeah. So the first one is row, and then this one is our COL. Yeah, our column percentage. So with the row, if I trace it this way, my total here should give me 100, right? This one. So what it means is that among those age 15 to 19, okay, about 62.15% of them are in male-headed households. That's what it means. And then 37.85 are in female-headed households. So if you add this and that, you get 100% here. Then in terms of the column, your total percentage can be traced here. Oops, okay. So you can trace that here. So it's across, so those in male-headed household, 18.66 or 18.7 are age 15 to 19. 20 to 24, we have about 17.35, 25. In that order until we get to the last one, that gives us 100%. So that's the difference. But in terms of preference, I personally prefer the row percentages because sometimes if you are doing, let's say, chi-square analysis to know whether the differences in these are statistically significant or not, it's easy for you to interpret it across the row percentages than the column percentages. Is that clear to us now?
I think it is.
Okay.
Okay. Next, what are the key differences between Stata versions 17 and 18? I used the 17 currently, but I noticed the history window on 17 appeared as review on 18. Can you shed more light on the differences, please?
Good question. I might not be able to give you some of the differences offhand, but in most cases, what I realized was that if you are using this 18, I think both of us are using 18 now. Bright and myself are all using 18. So if you are using the 18, some of the functionalities, for instance, if you are typing a command, it gives you suggestions as to what you want to type next, but the previous versions might not have that. And like I was explaining in my presentation, most often than not, softwares try to improve upon their limitations in the previous versions, okay? So obviously, the 18.5 or the most recent version, let me put it that way, is obviously an improved version of the previous one. Unless, Bright, you might want to add anything to that.
No, I think that is the major explanation, because it's just maybe add-ons from the previous one. So 18 obviously will have a lot of commands. We'll be able to do a lot of things differently than the 17. And just as Apple phones, the current Apple phone will obviously have some features that are not in the previous one. So we wouldn't be able to specifically say that this is not in this or this one was in that. But there are just different things that might have been added to the 18 to make it different from the 17.
Right, yeah.
Okay. The next question says, I think it's similar to one of the previous questions you've answered, but probably you could provide more clarity on it. It says, it seems that Stata is similar to most programming statistical software. So it's more about knowing the commands or functions to call. What is the best way to know more of these data commands or functions?
Good one. I think the best way for me sometimes is practice, and then more about engaging with it. The more you engage, the more you practice. Like the popular saying, practice makes man perfect, right? So let me give you a bit of background to that as well. Now we have people, just like those who are R users, we have people who have written specialized commands for certain analysis in Stata. And it's all because they've engaged with the software for a very long time, and they feel that there's a limitation in terms of a particular code or a particular command. So they want to generate their own command to take care of that limitation in that. So it's about constant practice. It's about asking your friends. It's about being more curious about whatever you want to do. And now there are a lot of YouTube videos. And one other thing I just was thinking through recently is about how now artificial intelligence is helping us to really get hold of or make things quite easier for us now. So sometimes you might be analyzing your data, and if you are struggling with a particular command, you can use whichever artificial intelligence software that you can chat with, and sometimes it can even give you the practical steps, different versions of the code. If this one does not work, then it will ask you to try this one. So these are some of the practical ways to, and of course the do file, mostly Bright and myself, we write do files, we share do files, we critique each other's do file and all that. So these are just some of the numerous ways you can get more comfortable with your commands. Yeah, Bright, do you want to add anything to that?
No, you have explained that.
Okay. When do we use the V005 and SVY set weightings? I think you've talked about what the difference between the two are, but at what point in the analysis do you use the two?
Okay, so let me explain this one. Once you generate a weight, and then you declare the data as a survey data. The time that you would use the weights for your analysis is when you are doing descriptive analysis, such as tabulations, normal frequencies and percentages. Or even if we are doing maybe cross tabulations and it's not chi-square, you can use the weights. That is the WT. Whenever you are doing complex analysis, such as, let's say, chi-square, logistic regression, or any other higher level analysis, where you need to take into consideration the primary sampling unit and the strata of the DHS data, you have to use the SVY set. So that is why, for instance, if we are doing a chi-square test, you have to precede the command tab with SVY, then a colon, then the tab will come, then it follows. Or if we are doing logistic regression, you have to start with SVY colon logistic, and then the rest will follow. At that level, you don't have to use the weight. You have to use the SVY, which is very, very important.
Great.
Okay. Please, are there available data on malaria vaccination coverage on the DHS for Ghana?
Malaria vaccine. I think the data set you might find this is the malaria indicator survey, which I think the most recent version. I'm not too sure though, yeah, so just check the malaria indicator cluster survey, malaria indicator survey, sorry. You might find that in there.
Perfect. Well, this person's question is on how to install Stata on Mac.
Okay.
Yes, I know you use Mac, so
Yes, I use Mac. Yeah. You can obviously install Stata on Mac. That's the first thing I need to emphasize. Bright is also a Mac user. But depending on the version of Mac you are using, sometimes you might be limited in terms of the Stata versions you can also use, depending on whether it is a paid version you are going to install or one that you got from your friend. And the one you might have gotten from your friend, I'm just talking about those that might not be the licensed versions, okay? So the new MacBooks are such that they try to, so 2022 might not really allow you to install some of the softwares, those that are not licensed. That is the only limitation, yeah. But if you have the resources, unfortunately, Stata is not a free version. So if you have the money to buy the licensed one, you can obviously install it. Yeah.
please can you say something on string to numeric and vice versa, particularly when importing Excel datasets to Stata? Can you show us on the Stata again, please?
Okay.
I think
Right, go, then I'll add on. Yeah.
I think that depends on what exactly you are doing, because sometimes you need to encode some of the variables. For instance, if we are dealing with a variable like the country of residence, if we want to do multiple country analysis, we need to encode that so that it becomes a numeric variable. And the use of encode would string that particular variable. That particular variable is a string variable. It would string it and make it numeric, so that when you append the data set, you'll be able to have the names of the countries assigned numeric codes. Sometimes if you are doing a recoding, you have to probably destring the particular variable into a binary form. Or there are commands in Stata that you can use to convert from one storage point to another. And that depends on the kind of analysis that you are doing. So for instance, like I've mentioned, if it is for let's say this string to numeric, you just have to destring the variable using encode as the command in Stata, and then to convert that into a numeric format, which you can use. There are other ways to change that into binary or any other format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the last question here says, is it possible to name our variables rather than using the V021, for example, just as we do with our regular data?
Exactly, that is highly possible. So you can use the rename command Bright showed you to rename your variables just for easy identification.
So another
that's possible.
question just popped in. With the tab command, what if we have more than 2 variables? Would it still be possible to execute a tabulation?
Yes, but you have to add one to it. So tab one, and then the variables will follow. So let's say if you want to tabulate maybe V001 and the V003, you can do tab and then one, V001, V003, and then it will come. The other thing you can do is that if there are more than maybe 2 variables and then they are all aligned, let's say you want to tabulate all the variables in your data set, you can tabulate from the first one using tab one, maybe V001, which is the first variable, then you bring a dash. Then the last variable, if it is V005, you bring that one too, and it will tabulate all the variables. So the best way, if we're dealing with more than one variables, is to use tab one, and then the variables will follow.
Exactly, yeah. And I can also see someone asking, what's the difference between recode and rename of the same variable? Good, let me try that then, Bright. You can add on if you want. So with the recode, you are creating a new variable out of the existing variable, okay? And then the rename is just renaming, giving the same variable a different name. So that's the main difference, right? Do you want to add anything to that?
No, it's the same, just as you have explained.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any other question? Okay. Is it
Yes,
okay?
it's definitely possible to import data from SPSS to Stata. It's very possible.
Yeah, I think that was part of what Bright emphasized. Or was
Yeah,
it, you emphasized that at the beginning of the conversation today.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Does Data 8 version 18 has AI in it?
I don't think so, but I think there are other tools such as Start AI that may have some issues with Stata in it with AI components. But the actual Stata version 18, it doesn't have AI in it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Abdulaziz and Dr. Bright, can you mention that you'd be sharing the link to the drive
Yes.
for the
Yes,
sources?
we
I want you to
we
speak to that.
we posted it, but I'm going to post that again
Thank
before
you.
we end our session.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Okay.
yeah.
So lastly, so this is the flyer for today's event, or today's webinar says part 1. So I wanted to ask, would there be a part 2? If so, when and where?
You are asking whether there will be a part 2.
Yes, the flyer
Yeah.
says part 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask if, where, and when there would be a part 2.
Yeah, definitely there will be a part 2, but with the time, I'm sure the leadership will discuss that and then share it on your platforms as you did for the first and then second one.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the part 2 will definitely come, not this weekend, because we have a very important occasion coming up this weekend, but maybe after Christmas or before Christmas, depending on circumstances. So I'll discuss that with Dr. Olayinka. Then I'll let you know exactly when the second session will be. And for the second session, we are just going to continue what we have just done, but we are just going to do some descriptive analysis on chi-square tests and regression results. so that we can all see exactly using the same data sets that we are going to share with you and the same do files that we have.
Great. So we believe that ahead of that session, everyone would have been able to install Stata on their
Yeah.
devices, and then you would have successfully downloaded the do file so that we can navigate through the practical session together at that
Sure.
training. Okay, Bright Aaron, please ask your question.
Yeah, please, I asked about whether you've recorded this session and whether we can have access to the recording.
Yes, the link to the recording would be shared with everyone using the email with which you registered for the session. So please look forward to it, and we implore you to kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get timely updates on the recordings. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So there would be another session. We'll take a break next week from the DHS analytics, just like Dr. Bright emphasized. But before the end of the year, there would be a final session where we'll do some descriptive analysis and inferential analysis, so that ahead of the new year, we know that we have been well fortified to conduct analysis using Stata, and it's user friendly. So we believe that we'll be able to successfully navigate its use going forward. Badru Lawal.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like the second session is talking about is taking off right away. He said that we are going to run a descriptive analysis. Yes, today, being the second session for today's lecture. So, but you are taking it as if it's the next meeting. But you can clarify from him. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Wright, would you like to provide clarity on what he just sought?
Oh, okay. I think just as we have explained, there are going to be two sessions. The first session is an introduction to Stata and some basic commands in Stata using the DHS, which we have done today. There is no other session because it's just 1 hour plus questions and answers, and we have finished everything. The next session we want to do is to do some basic analysis, descriptive, regression analysis, and chi-square test. And that is not today. It's going to be another week. So that one will be communicated with you. So that is the clarity. There is no other session apart from what we have done today.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All
You are welcome.
Thank you. So with this, we have come to the end of today's session. We implore you again to please follow us on our social media platforms for timely updates. As mentioned, we'll take a break from the DHS analytics next week so that we take another session that week, and then before the end of the year, we do a mop-up of other pending things we need to sort on DHS analytics. So it's been a pleasure having you on board today. Yeah, it's the 7th of December. It's a weekend. So please enjoy the weekend, and thank you for being open to knowledge sharing. We appreciate you dearly. See you some other time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Bright and Dr. Seidu.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Welcome. Bye.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much.